Hello everybody, how you doing today? It's Superfiend here, and welcome back to Whacky World. It is, of course, Planet Coaster, and we are still working on this little slice of tropical piratey shipwreck area. And the first thing we're doing back here is we cut a hole in the plaza. And the reason I did that is I want to have a nice tall centerpiece that's going to also help with the lighting. And because this area is supposed to resemble tropical shacks or huts that were built after a shipwreck, our tall centerpiece, what works really well here is the pirate mast from the ship. And so we're putting that in the center where we made that little hole. And then to also reinforce the Lost Civilization theme, I thought it would be fitting to put some large stone blocks underneath there to act as the foundation for that. But with the size of the base of the mast and then the stone blocks themselves, and being that I didn't want to cut any bigger of a hole out of the plaza, there's really not any more like tiles of pathway to remove. It wasn't going to work with the stone blocks. So like right now I'm trying to figure out, is there any way I can put a border or some sort of trim around the blocks, like something the pirates would have built onto it that would keep it so that the guests aren't like climbing on it. You know, if there were kids or something, you want to have something that they can't climb on. But it wasn't going to work. You know, I was trying to do something with the brackets. And then ultimately I had to decide that we're going to have to get rid of the stone blocks. And so now what I'm doing is I am building just some custom fence using these larger wood pieces. They work well for this kind of stuff. And so we're just moving them around and getting them into position. And when we're ready, we'll go ahead, we'll remove the blocks, and we'll be adding some posts, because currently those pieces of the fence are floating in the air. So we're going to add some posts to close up the corners, and then we'll add some posts in the midsections of these fence pieces. And then we'll go ahead, we'll vary up the color on them a little bit to give it that kind of worn and it's been around for a while look. That's always, it's a minor detail, but it's something that I always stress and think that it's important to do. You really, even though you're using the same pieces like over and over and over and over again when you build stuff, changing the color ever so slightly, it's just one of those ways that you can get a little bit of variation in there. You know, sometimes add a little bit of a tilt or a turn or stuff like that to pieces, and it's like that little extra step that makes it look a little bit more realistic. Now what we're going to do here is, like I said before, the mast is going to assist with the lighting in this area. And I said in the previous video, I really wanted to have like ropes back here. I don't know why I'm so hung up on the ropes or the straw ceilings for that matter either, but it's like I'm really hung up on it thematically in my brain. It's like I have to have those things over here. And so what we're doing now is I just went around and I lifted a few posts that are part of the fencing that we built in the previous video. I lifted them up, and so now I'm just going to go ahead and very carefully take some of the free or the straight pieces of rope that are in the free scenery there, not part of the building scenery, and just get them lined up. And what I really want to do is I just want to give this impression that the mast goes up really tall, and then we've got these posts around the perimeter that tie into it, and it's kind of unrealistic. You know, the little post that's kind of like to the right of the screen now, well, now it's on the left. They really wouldn't offer much support to that mast. They're not really there for support. And I could imagine, like, if the mast was like, if it was windy and the mast was wobbling around, it would probably damage these posts if it was in real life. But you know, it's not real life, and so we don't have to worry about those kinds of things. And I'm just adding these ropes here and lining it up. And I went ahead and I did most of the plaza, but I didn't feel it was important to show everybody like the same steps over and over. So now we're in nighttime here, and I wanted to hang these lanterns. And I talked about this in the last video too. I kind of wanted to use these Chinese lanterns, I think they are. And I think they're from the World's Fair pack, but I'm not entirely sure. And so anyway, so what we're doing is we're selecting a piece of rope, and we're doing the advanced move tool and then clicking on a lantern and hanging the lantern. Now all of the lanterns are going to be angled slightly, and that's because their position is determined by the angle of the rope. We're going to save fixing that for later after we get more of them positioned. So just going around here and getting a few of them in the position, and then what we'll do is we'll start going to each of the lanterns, and we'll start fixing their orientation so that they're hanging more vertically up and down the way they should, because that's how gravity works. And then after that, I don't know if I show it specifically in this footage, but I did go through to a few lanterns and just change the colors ever so slightly. So like a little bit different shade of yellow or orange. I think I got a green one in there somewhere. And right now, I'm not really liking how much light the lanterns add to this area. I want them to add more light. And so what I was experimenting with there was adding another light and hiding it in the lantern. And the light was good, but you couldn't change the color. So now we're going over to the area color lights. And what I'm doing is I'm going to place them around the perimeter of the plaza and then set the light to be like almost black. So you pick your color of light that you want. In this case, it's kind of like yellow or orangey. And then you set the color of it to almost black. And then it will have this very, very, very subtle effect on your area. And so what that's going to do overall is when you look at this scene in total as a whole, it's going to look like these hanging lanterns are providing all the ambient light that's around. And of course, they're not really doing that. And right now, those area color lights, I just kind of have them out on the stone pieces around the edge of the area. But towards the end of the video, I'm going to take all those area lights. I'm going to split them off from the building that they're a part of and make them part of a separate building. And then I'm going to hide each of them into the stone column so that you can't see them at all. And then so what that does is it really kind of, it finishes selling that effect that it's the hanging lights that are lighting the whole area. Now over here, I wanted to kind of like exclude this like little picnic bench. I kind of wanted to make it feel a little bit more private. And so the rope and the supports for it that are part of the lighting for this one are not connected to any of the other stuff. So the theming is there. It's consistent with the area, but it feels, just visually looking at it, it just feels like it's separate to me. It almost feels like it's a little bit more private, even though it's not. It's right in the middle of everything else. It's got the pathway right on the other side. And then I thought it would make sense to join that support up with the building that's over here. Add another light. You can see that one's red. So when you look at the lights now as the camera zips around, you can see that I've kind of changed the color tones of them a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to repeat that over here on this side, except this one is going to kind of be joined up with the other supports that I build. I don't know why I had a little bit of trouble getting this piece of rope lined up correctly. It just takes a little bit of practice and patience. And this one, I guess the reason it's joined up with the other stuff is because there's no like private picnic table over here or private bench over here. So, I figured just join it up with everything else, and I figured I would join this one as well. And with all the different ropes and things out of the way, we're going to go ahead now and add some more lanterns over here. And that frees us up to go back and add some more of these area color lights. And we're going to put some on this side, which is kind of the entrance of this little plaza, and then removing the archer that I had placed there for scale. And then, like I said earlier, we're going to go ahead, we're going to select each of these lights after adjusting the colors, but these area lights, we're going to select them all. We're going to split them off from this building here. We're going to make them part of their own building. And the reason why I do that is in case in the future I ever want to make adjustments to them, it's going to be much easier to select this little wood post that's a separate building and then go into edit mode on that and be able to click and drag and select the lights. Without splitting these lights off from the building that they were a part of, I would have to go to edit that building and then to select them or make changes to them. They're buried inside of all this other scenery pieces. It would be very difficult to select them. It would just be much more frustrating. So splitting them off onto their own little separate building is just kind of a convenience thing if I need to go back in and work on them later. And I do that stuff a lot in Planet Coaster, and a lot of the time I don't need it, but when I do need it, it's really convenient. And so now we're going to go in and we're going to add some foliage and plants around the area. It's been mostly just the regular like terrain paintbrush, mostly the real leafy texture. I can't remember exactly which biome I got that out of, although I do know that Whacky World uses a custom biome. It's got some of the alpine ground cover or ground textures. It's got some of the tropical, and then I think it's got some of the, is it desert or western? I'm not sure, but for the sand and stuff, for one of the sand textures I use that, and I use them all in conjunction together to get the nice terrain effects when I'm doing that kind of stuff, the terrain painting. It's very important to paint your terrain. We're going to have a little bit of that in this video towards the end. It's kind of funny, though. I haven't done that in so long. I kind of felt a little bit noobish with it. Like I couldn't remember how I got some of my good terrain texture effects on the ground with painting. It's apparently it's gonna take a little bit for me to kind of get back up to speed with that. But so anyways, going back to the foliage that we're placing here, we got one of my favorite bushes for a tropical theme. That's the Scaevola, if that's how you pronounce it. I'm never sure. It's this really nice leafy bush. It works well if you just place it flat on the ground and rotate it every other time that you place it. It works well if you sink it into the ground a little bit. It works well if you tilt it on its side and have like the leaves poking up from the side. It's like it's the MVP of plant life in Planet Coaster for tropical theming, in my opinion. Another little kind of like menial task here, a little bit of a small housekeeping type thing. Those tropical huts, when we first placed them, we had the doors facing the wrong direction. They got restrooms in them. So turning them now so that the restroom faces into the plaza so that the guests are going into the doors to use the restroom. And then also after rotating it, there's a few like odds and ends around the building that we don't need to kind of have now that they're placed in this more built up scenic area. And then right here, I'm just fixing a minor problem where these wood planks on the side of the building, part of the fruit stand, are poking through the fence that we built. And then those support columns, or whatever they are, the scaffolding, they have really large hit boxes, so I had to move them out of the way to make adjustments to those planks. Now we have just a little bit more foliage or bush work to do around the building here, and then we're going to be going over across the pathway, and we're going to be adjusting all the bushes and stuff over there. Now that whole area where we're about to jump to right here, this used to be much more dense in terms of plant life and foliage. It was going all down the path, and one of the things that we did in this area is we moved all that into the air. It's all floating above us right now, and that was so we could make room for this larger grass hut and shop structure that's kind of a little bit off camera to the left right there. So now what we need to do is we need to go back in, and we need to kind of like fill that area in a little bit, and we're going to make some minor adjustments, move these things around a little bit, kind of close up some gaps, make sure that it's not like obstructing or interfering with the ride. Move this big tree right here because it kind of interferes with this little backstage storage area for the shop. And then since these scaffolding pieces are behind the building, we're going to go ahead and remove them because they're not really going to be seen. And then now, last video I alluded to making some Theme Maker's Toolkit items, and here you get to see them in action. Just these simple squares that are intended to be concrete slabs. And I talked about how it was kind of difficult in the last video, but you can see how useful they are now. I have a 4x4, a 2x2, a 1x1, and then a 1x2 and a 2x4 size square. And they look really good, and they really fit the bill back here. I'm really happy with how versatile they are in the different sizes and being able to fill in this oddly shaped area. And in a moment, you'll see that they do flexi color pretty well also. And we're going to set them to kind of like the same color green that these walls are. Interesting note about those, I guess they're more useful than I really anticipated them being. They've been on the workshop now for about 10 days, and each one of them has plus or minus about like 200 people subscribed to them. I'm kind of surprised that many people have added them to their Planet Coaster scenery. I really haven't been keeping an eye on it until just now. Now, this is one of my favorite things to do. We have all this floating scenery in the air that's like little placeholders, leftovers from stuff that used to be here or that we moved out of the way because we weren't sure if it was going to work. And now we just got to go through and clean some of that up, delete stuff, move stuff off the path, and get this area looking like production ready. As a computer programmer, one of the things I do when I'm editing code is if I think I'm going to start like getting rid of stuff or do heavy refactoring is, I start commenting things out with these like comments that say to do, remove this. And so getting to go on the Planet Coaster, it's kind of like the same strategy. It's like I don't want to get rid of anything until I absolutely know I don't need it. So I just kind of like float them in the air or hover them over the lagoon or whatever. But eventually, you find out like, okay, we're not going to need it. And then you get to go back and you get to remove that stuff, and you get left with this nice, really pristine, production ready scenery. If it's programming code, like for my job, it's production ready code because all the garbage and stuff that I know I don't need for certain is been thrown out. It's going to get checked into the source code control and all that. It's going to be production, and It's kind of the same feeling when I do that in Planet Coaster. It's a very satisfying feeling. Now, I did take a brief like fly around the park, and what I was doing there is I was looking for like different custom fencing and stuff that I had added in the park, because I wanted to line these pathways here with some fence, and I was just, you know, looking if there was anything that I had already made that looked really good. And in the end, I decided to use the rope fences here. And we have ourselves a little problem where this one right here is too big, and it collides with the built-in path. And we have an option of turning off the built-in fence along the path. But if we turn off that built-in fencing, then I have to do custom fencing around the whole area, and I don't want to do custom fencing around the entire pathway. So instead, we're just using some of these beams from the spooky pack. That's what it's called, the spooky pack. We're using some of these beams to fill that in on the other side, and then I thought I would go and add them inside the plaza as well, so that it's kind of consistent. And then we got a little bit of plant work to do over here, because we're going to hide kind of how ugly the this hidden temple's scenery, the blocks that form the floor, we're going to hide how ugly those are in terms of how they interact with the terrain. Make a few more adjustments here, and then we're going to get our terrain paintbrush out, and we're going to start varying things up here a little bit. Now, I do get thrown off really, really big here because I'm painting with the sand, but it's appearing completely white, and I thought it was supposed to be like yellow, and it is. The problem is that this area is kind of shaded. It doesn't have direct light, and so it confused me, and you'll see me fidget with the light. But one of the oh no, here's the sand right here. Like this confused me. I was like, why is the sand white? That doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, it's white over here too. What the heck is going on? And then I painted over here, and I'm like, no, that's the normal color. Oh, you turn on your flashlight and it's fine. So anyway, so one of the things I wanted to do back here is I wanted to have it like more dirt and gravel. And so I kind of like made dirt, and then I did gravel where the implied pathway is of the staffers and stuff going to that little backstage area for the shops, and also like for the staff building and stuff. And then I'm just going around here and doing a little bit of like dirt and sand painting to vary things up. And this is where I was alluding to earlier in the video, where I said I felt a little bit noobish. It wasn't looking quite the way I liked it to look, and I wasn't getting a real good blend between the dirt and the leaves, but you know, I wasn't going to beat myself up over it too bad. And that brings us to the end. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know with comments or thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you're not already. Follow me on Twitter, possibly. And check out the rest of the channel. Hopefully you'll find something you enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you next time. You have a good afternoon, and take care.